Welcome to Blaise the Trail podcast, bringing you authentic and vulnerable stories that will inspire you to breathe fire on this world and become your own hero. Here's your host, Blaise Hunter.
Hello, welcome to Blaise the Trail podcast. I'm Blaise Hunter, and I am a fertility expert. No, I don't help people get pregnant. This is a different type of expertise. I actually inspire women to birth their dreams, their passions, and their goals, as well as help them discover peace amongst infertility. After going through traumas and tragedies, dealing with a rare disease, and experiencing 3 miscarriages, I decided to take charge of my life and not let life happen to me, but rather become the hero of my own life. I am not barren. I continually birth my purpose every day. So that's why I've created this show, to demonstrate how even though we experience setbacks and disappointments, we still have a destiny to birth. We just need to blaze the trail and be expecting. This podcast will inspire you to lean into your problems and allow them to be the vehicle that transports you into becoming the hero of your own life so you can breathe fire on this world. On this week's episode, we'll be talking about Fertility Schmertility. This is my story. I will take you through my grief in the first miscarriage. I will unmask the physical and emotional trauma from the second miscarriage. I will lead you through the journey of my third miscarriage and how I ended up here today as a fertility expert. No matter what pains, struggles, or setbacks we go through, we are not barren. That's the lesson we need to learn. And we are all mothers of purpose, and we have a destiny to birth. I am a published author, international speaker, fertility expert, and certified life coach. My coaching practice is based on the quote from Fred Devito, "What doesn't challenge you doesn't change you." I want to challenge myself and the world to take off the masks and get vulnerable so we can address root issues and grow. And that's how we can transform into the best versions of ourselves. So I'm going to be crazy vulnerable in the show today. I originally wrote my book, Heroine, Embrace Your Flaws and Own Your Awesome, to heal from my infertility and pregnancy loss and self-hatred and blame. I hid for so long in the shame and in the silence and fell into that pit of darkness of depression. But what I had to learn is my openness, my flaws, my candidness, my voice was the key to my healing. So let's take you through this journey. I did have a daughter, no problems getting pregnant. I think we tried for a few months and boom, healthy pregnancy, morning sickness to the day I gave birth, but no real issues. HCG numbers always climbed. All the ultrasounds showed perfect little human growing inside of me. Everything was tick-tock perfect. I barely gained any weight because I was so sick with morning sickness. So I felt amazing. Even though I was puking every day, I didn't have any cause for concern. Everything was amazing, and I had no worry of actually miscarrying or losing that child. It was like, I am pregnant and I will birth this baby girl. And I did, and it was glorious. She was perfection. And even though I did go through years of sleepless nights, years of a colicky and horrible crying baby that made me regret even becoming a mother some sleepless nights, I do admit that. But when she became 3, she turned a corner, and I turned a corner as a mother and really enjoyed being a mama, enjoyed nurturing this child who didn't kill me with her cries every night. And I started to bond better and come into my own as a mother. At that age, I felt finally ready to entertain the idea of having a second child. I just wasn't physically and mentally or emotionally ready up until that point. But I remember feeling, okay, I got this now. We can do this. Let's have another baby. And to me, I walked into that kind of job, because it really is a job for women. We think of it as a task, as a job that we get done. And I walked into that thinking a little bit overconfident probably, that I had no issue getting pregnant with my baby girl Lexi, that this time would be smooth sailing. Boy, was I wrong. Wow. I look back and I was pretty cocky. Like, miscarriages and stillbirths and infertility happen to those other people. They don't happen to me. I had a great baby. I had a healthy pregnancy. I had no issues. I'm great. I am fertile. But then, we didn't get pregnant. Month after month after month. Nothing. Negative tests. And then one day, 10 months later, boom, positive pregnancy test. It was really faint, though, and now looking back, that's a clue. The line was really faint, but I thought it was just early. I wasn't feeling morning sickness. I was convinced I was pregnant. And then it was a very cold day in Canada, and I was going to see my husband at work. And I was opening the door. I was literally at his office. I opened the door, and it was very slippery, very cold, Canadian winter, and I landed smack on my butt and my knee, and it was hard. That was a hard fall. And I was instantly worried because I was newly pregnant, right? But I shook it off and be like, they always say, we're built for this, we're fine. That baby's protected in there, right? And probably not even 6 hours later, I began to spot. And I knew. But you still hang on to that thread of hope, right? You know, but you still hang on that I got this baby. This is going to be okay. You call the doctor, and they really, unfortunately, in this system, don't give you the empathy you are seeking in that moment of complete frightenedness, of complete terrified that you're losing your baby. And they say, well, there's really nothing you can do. Just wait it out and see what happens. If you start bleeding more, come in. That's the worst advice. I know, what do you expect them to say? Because they probably see this every day, but it was so heart-wrenching to be just sloughed off like that. So I waited, but I began to bleed a little bit more. And so I went into the doctor, and they were like, well, your cervix is closed, and this doesn't make any sense. And yeah, you are pregnant, but it was barely. The HCG levels were so low. I didn't know then, though, that low means a significant possibility that baby's not going to survive, right? But I didn't know that back then. You're basically a virgin in the miscarriage land, and you have all these hopes that if you just will it to happen, it will happen as a miracle. And sometimes it does, but sometimes it's just not going to happen. And they gave me the medicine, and I wasn't warned of all of what was about to take place going home that day. I took that medicine, which creates a massive amount of cramping almost immediately. It induces labor. So you are pushing out whatever you got going on in there, from placenta, blood, that little baby, that little fetus that's growing inside, it's forming inside of you. And I remember going to the bathroom and pushing out one long, about 6 inches of flesh. And I was so shocked. I was so shocked what it looked like. No one prepared me for that. It does actually feel like intestines are coming out of you. And I know it's your placenta, and I know it's the natural process to miscarry if it's not going to be a viable pregnancy, but there's nothing natural about that. It's barbaric to watch yourself do that in the toilet by yourself, with no one knowing what you're going through internally, emotionally or physically. And that sent me into such a tailspin of grief, grieving what I just lost, blaming my fall, blaming myself that I killed my baby. And I took that with me for months and months. I could barely hold myself together, crying at every moment, in such an overwhelming grief. I didn't even know how to process. I didn't know how to verbalize it. I didn't know how to tell my husband really what was going on in me. My family had never experienced infertility or loss, so my mom didn't know how to handle it. it was just an unknown. And unless you've really gone through that, you don't know how to empathize with someone in the trenches of a miscarriage or a loss like that. My husband also began to grieve because it was a shock. We didn't ever think that was a possibility. And he didn't know how to process it. And there's definitely not a lot of outlets for men to go to and get help or solace or advice on how to deal with their emotions. I find in past, we've always said, this is a woman problem. This is happening to me, not you. It is happening to them. It may be not happening to their body physically, but they're a dad. They're losing their baby too. And my husband didn't know how to grieve that. He kept it in. He wanted to be strong for me. He couldn't allow me to see him in pain because I was overflowing with my pain, right? And I just remember one beautiful moment, actually, for the man side out there. Like, he was working for an organization, a young hockey team, ice hockey team, and the coach had told the players without even Rob's knowing of this. And Rob at first was like, oh, wow, I'm kind of ticked that the coach said something to these players. They're between the ages of, 17 to 20, 21. So they're young guys. They wouldn't know anything about fertility or miscarriages or anything like that, right? But I remember Rob holding this grief so tight within him, and he didn't want a single person to know or talk to anyone about it. But as he was going to a game one day, a road game, going to load the bus, all these players, over 20 players, walked out of the bus and stood in a line and hugged my husband. And they didn't know the loss he was feeling, but they knew the power of a hug. And that really brought my husband through his grief, knowing he had a backing of other males, a camaraderie, a circle of men to hold each other up and say, no matter what you're going through, buddy, we're a team and we got you. And I just encourage people out there, men grieve too, and you need to support the men. This isn't just a woman problem. And we really grieved that first miscarriage so hard. It led to a feeling of, shame for me, such shame that it was me, that I couldn't get the job done, that he got me pregnant, but I couldn't pull through. I wasn't clutch. And it was just another faucet of feeling not good enough, that maybe my baby rejected me, that they didn't want me as a mother. Maybe I ruined it with all my, regrets my first few years with my daughter. Maybe it was payback for regretting becoming a mom. Maybe now I was getting karma for that. And all these thoughts were going through my head. Sex didn't feel safe. And sex with my husband, like, both sides are going through different emotions. And I wanted to cover it up and just bear down and have another baby. I'm like, let's get through this. Let's do this. Let's bury it and move on and get the job done. And we can do this. Push forward. Because that's a go-getter that I am. You get knocked down, you get back up, you try again. But what you have to understand is when you're grieving from a loss, when your body is healing from a trauma of a miscarriage, you're not fertile yet. You may be physically, but you're not emotionally and mentally. And my husband knew that. He knew that we weren't ready, but I wasn't ready to accept that. So he, in turn, instead of saying we're not ready, just said he didn't feel safe to have sex without a condom. And that broke me. I'll be honest here. That I resented him for that. Because every time we seemed to try and connect physically and he put a condom on, I was like, you're taking this away from me. Like, what is the point of having sex right now? And that's such a big mistake us women make, is that we think of sex as only as a baby-making tool rather than connection and intimacy and love. Like, it's not a job. It's about connecting as one and producing a baby out of that beautiful love. So we've got to take the focus off the mission of having a baby and get back to the connecting and the intimacy and the creating of love, right? And so I remember very vividly having intercourse with my husband and crying inside. And that's not how you want to be. Like, he didn't know I was feeling that, and I didn't know how to tell him. So we had to do some work. I had to tell him that, I want another baby, but he had to tell me he wasn't quite ready, and I had to accept that and just allow space for healing. Allow it to organically move forward and progress and feel safe again rather than force the issue. I had to come to terms that I was resenting him, but he was hurting too, and I had to honor that, and we had to work through that, and it took work. It took pulling together, not pulling apart. And a lot of times we do that when we experience a loss or frustration or a setback or a delay. We retreat in our safe zones and our corners, but then we're no longer aligned and pushing towards one another. We're pulling apart. And then there is a lack of connection, a lack of love, a lack of unity. And you can't pull together and get yourselves out of that dark place pulling apart. So we had to take steps together. I had to lay down my resentments and lay down my visions and goals, and I had to support him, and he supported me, and we somehow came together again and felt safe again to try yet again. So we started trying again. We felt like we could do this, and we understood the risks now. We weren't going in there blind and full of cockiness. We understood there was possibilities of loss, but we were willing to do this. We can do this. But in the back of my head, I'll be honest, I didn't think it would happen again. I'm like, okay, one and done. We've done this one. Check that off the list. We survived it. Woo-hoo. Baby 2 is coming, and there's smooth sailing forward now. We've been through our hell. Ooh. Again, got a little bit cocky with that one, right? So, yes, I had another miscarriage. And this was one for probably the medical books. I'm sure this could be published one day. It's really unheard of what all transpired in this second miscarriage. But it started off with me being really sick. And for those of you that don't know yet, that I have been battling a really rare autoimmune disease for about 14 years now. And it causes extreme asthma, where shortness of breath, loss of breath, very dangerous. If I don't get to a hospital when I'm that low in oxygen, like I could die. And I've had some close calls. I've had a lot of bouts of pneumonia. And I was pregnant this time, so I tried to not up my medicines because I was being very conscious of the little baby growing inside of me. And I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't want to up the meds. So I just fought it and fought and fought. And I just wasn't well. And I woke up and I was coughing up blood, and I knew something had transpired in the night where something is definitely wrong here. And I went to the emergency and said, something's going on, and I'm coughing up blood. I don't know what's happening. I'm pregnant, but I need to know what's happening. A couple things happen here that I want to bring to light that we don't often talk about sometimes when we're in situations with people in authority of you or power or the hospital, and you're vulnerable and you're sick, and people make little comments and the damage they can do. Right here, the x-ray tech said, "Oh, you're pregnant? I wouldn't have an x-ray if you're pregnant." I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm coughing up blood. I have a lung disorder. What am I supposed to do right now? I need to know what's happening. And I had to overcome with all these fears. And the doctor came in and advised me, and they said, you know what? The same amount of radiation as if you fly in the plane. You could fly to literally anywhere and have the same amount of radiation as an x-ray when you're pregnant. So you need about 100 x-rays all at once to really do some damage. You're okay. So I took a deep breath and said, you know what, I can't carry a baby unless I'm okay. So I've got to take this chance and take the x-ray. And guess what? I was walking around with a collapsed lung. My left lung was totally collapsed, and yet I was still walking and talking. It's really remarkable, actually, what your body can do. And the x-ray tech came back in, and said to me, "Oh, it's a good thing you got that x-ray. You have a collapsed lung. And I wouldn't worry about it. Kim Kardashian flies all the time when she's pregnant. You'll be fine." I was like, "What did you just say to me? Are you kidding me right now?" I didn't have it in me to report that person back then, but if that happened to me again, you damn sure I would report that. That's not okay. That's not okay to say stuff like that. Even if it was trying to make me feel better, that was so unprofessional. And it was, I needed that x-ray. I went into an emergency surgery right where in my hometown. They ambulanced me with a makeshift tube in my lung, and I got ambulanced to the nearest city, which was 3 hours away, while pregnant, not taking any medicine because I didn't want to damage the baby. I started bleeding heavily as well at that time. So I was deathly afraid that I was losing this baby too. I got to this hospital and I was stuck in the emergency room all night and bleeding, but they did a little internal ultrasound and I had a heartbeat, and the HCG numbers were climbing. So I thought I had hope. We could see that baby. And even though all the trauma that was happening around me, that baby was fighting. So I had hope. And I was admitted into the hospital for 8 days, getting that lung back up and running, getting the levels back up and running. And every day those HCG levels climbed. So I felt like I've conquered this. This baby is coming with me. We can do this. And they released me a week later, feeling that I was still hanging on to that pregnancy. I was recuperating from a collapsed lung. I was breathing normal again. I went out and bought maternity clothes because I'm like, no, I'm not going to live in fear. I'm going to go buy some maternity clothes, and I'm claiming that this pregnancy is sticking. Well, unfortunately, sometimes you can't will things even though you try so hard. I went back in a few weeks later to confirm, and the pregnancy was no longer viable. There was no heartbeat. That baby was dead inside. And I remember driving the 3 hours for that appointment, feeling confident that the baby was alive, that I never brought a suitcase. I never brought anything. I thought I was going to go home with great news. And what happened was I had to stay over for surgery. But then we decided, because of the collapsed lung, that we're going to leave it and see if you could pass it normally. So I did. I went home then with my husband. We took the medicine. We tried to miscarry the baby. This was over Christmas. And I did miscarry the baby. And again, that was even more barbaric and horrific. I was further along this time. And the amount of blood and tissue that came out, I can't even explain to you. You wouldn't even think being 10 weeks would create that much blood, that much tissue, that much clots, that much guesswork. Is that my baby or is that a blood clot? So much where you're just like covered in blood, staring at blood clots, being like, is that my baby? Is that it right there? Am I just supposed to flush it down the toilet? Like that's what I'm supposed to do right now? So much tissue, so much strings of tissue. Like I can't even explain to you, and this is why I'm doing this. And I know it's very graphic, but I think the world needs to hear this. What so many women are going through, and we don't talk about it. That we'll post scandalous tops on Instagram of your cleavage and these young girls with their sexy clothes, but yet we don't post the remnants of a miscarriage. We don't post of the realities of what women are going through. So I'm going to post it on my podcast today. This is what's happening every single day to women, sitting on the toilet in agony and pain, crying. And if they have other children in the home, they are hearing this. You're trying to guard them from this, but there's sometimes no way to shield them from the barbaric practices of miscarrying at home. I even took a sample and kept it in a bag because I didn't know if that was even normal, what I was passing. It was so It was so traumatizing for me to actually push all of that tissue out. And it did come out. We had an ultrasound right after Christmas. I was bleeding out. But I got to the hospital and we did an ultrasound and they said, "You've just got some tissue left. You've got some tissue left." I was bleeding out so bad on Boxing Day at 2 a.m. I didn't want to go to the hospital, but I knew that that amount of blood wasn't normal either. And my mom forced me and my husband forced me to go to emergency. My mom took me so my husband could stay at home with my girl. And again, so barbaric that you go into this emergency room miscarrying your baby and you're losing your baby and you've got all these emotions, plus you're traumatically bleeding out. And they don't know what to do with you because everything that they're doing isn't stopping the bleeding. And they're pulling out the clots out of you. And you can feel it. Oh, you're not numb. And no matter what morphine they're giving you, it's not numbing anything. And then they're like, "Okay, well, we've done all we can do. You're just going to have to push out the rest of these clots." So they literally left me in the dark room with a blanket over me so no one could see the blood. But under the sheet, I was just bleeding, pushing out one clot after another, thinking, "That one's it. That's it. I've done it." And then I called them, and then they're like, "No, there's still more in there." Finally, they got the bleeding to stop. Finally, over the morning hours, we got me stable again. And they think they got the most of the product out. That's what they say, the product. Really, it's your baby. That's what you're feeling. But you got my baby out, and you put it in the garbage. Right? That's what you're thinking, right? So you go home and you go for some more tests and you get the ultrasound and they say you've got most of it out, but there is still this 9 millimeter piece left. Just this 9 millimeter piece. And you know what? That is so small. That's so small that we don't want to risk putting you through surgery because of your collapsed lung, because of all these issues going on. I think you can pass this tissue with your next period. So I took the advice of the doctors and I didn't go through a D&C. I decided to wait it out. My husband and I took our daughter to Mexico and we just tried to heal from the second miscarriage. The trauma of it, I was stunned, so numb and stunned, and yet felt everything at the same time. It's a weird dynamic what you're going through when you go through that again. And then I remember feeling a little bit more emotionally confident that I could do this, because we were in Mexico and we just kind of said we're still here and we can do this, right? And he's like, "Yeah." My husband's like, we can do this. We kind of were a little bit more prepared going through it the second time, just because we had been through it once before. But it really didn't take the shock and the stun away. It just kind of, unfortunately, you're prepared for the bad news because you've been through it before. So after the coming months, I did get my period like clockwork. And I was like, boom, I know I've passed the tissue. I'm free and clear. And we felt like we could try again because we did want another baby. So we actively tried again in the next few months. And nothing was happening. Still not pregnant, but I had faith it would happen, that we would get pregnant. I started a new job. Feeling like, I'm going to take my mind off my pain and my grief and sitting at home and sulking when I can't control anything in my life right now. I'm going to work part-time for a little while. So I started work again, and I was enjoying it and finding purpose and distraction and putting creativity in a different outlet, and it was going well. And then one day at work, I was sitting there and I felt like my insides were coming out of me. And I ran up to the bathroom and I was passing baseball-sized clots. And I didn't understand what was happening. Is this another miscarriage? What's happening? This was 5 months after that miscarriage where I was bleeding out and the collapsed lung issues, all of that, right? So 5 months had passed. And I was so confused. Is this another miscarriage? What's happening? I had to go get it for an emergency ultrasound. And the freaking anomaly of the situation is that 9 millimeter piece of placenta never detached. from the second miscarriage. So basically, in simple terms, I had a 5-month-long miscarriage. And it was causing so many issues of massive bleeding because it was left in there for 5 months and it never left my body. So I had to go for an emergency D&C to remove a 9-millimeter piece of placenta that had stayed in me for 5 months. But the doctors were so confused about how could that even be possible. They didn't even know for sure it was placenta. Maybe it was just a ball of cells that were bleeding and vascular and had blood flow in them. So when I went in for surgery, my doctor actually told me she doesn't know if she can get it and she doesn't know if it's actually placenta. So she's going to leave a note for me in recovery because she had to dart off after. And I'm thinking, like, this is my experience. I don't even know what the process is happening right now, but I'm trusting you with my life. I woke up in recovery and she said, she gave me the note, the nurse gave me a note and said, we got it all, it was placenta, it's over. And I remember just feeling so happy that it was finally over. I could finally close the book on this miscarriage. And for many of you that are on the outside of people, of family members and friends who have miscarriages, you think that they've passed it and now they move forward. And it's not always the case. Like in my case, it was over 5 months long. Yes, that's an anomaly. But just because you go for surgery, just because you pass the tissue, quote unquote, doesn't mean it's over. Like the physical part may be over in that traumatic portion in that moment, but there's so much more of levels and layers of grief, of recovery, of PTSD that you haven't even seen yet. So it's not over. Let people have the space to grieve, to heal, to take a step forward, and be messy in their emotions. Don't minimalize what they went through because you don't quite understand it. And if you don't know how to understand it, just sit with them and hold space for them. There are no perfect words to say. There are no perfect actions to do, but you just sit with people and allow them to heal, however that may be, however that may look like. And that's what I had to do. And somehow we recovered through that. Somehow me and my husband pulled together stronger, deeper, and closer than ever, knowing that we could conquer horrendous setbacks in our life. We still have a daughter. We still have each other. We are going to be okay. That was the mantra we used. We still wanted another baby. So we tried again. People thought we were crazy. You've been through two. This last one was barbaric and traumatic. Are you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, I'm not quite done yet. I want another baby. It's in me. For some reason, I'm not ready to say no. I'm not ready to give up. So as I was writing my book, I was finishing my book up, healing from these grieving moments in my life, thinking I've conquered it all, and then I get pregnant while I'm writing my book. And I'm like, wow, isn't this beautiful? I'm birthing a book and a baby at the same time. It's all coming together for me. I have arrived. Again, there's that little bit of cockiness that's still, my ego is still getting in the way. And I had finished my book and it was just about to go into editing and I miscarried. I was actually about to do a new talk, kind of showcasing my whole book and helping women get through self-esteem issues, and I was miscarrying during my first talk. I showed up. I said, you know what? I'm still going to do the talk. And I did the talk in the midst of miscarrying my third baby. And what shifted in that third miscarriage is that I did wake up in the middle of the night at 2 a.m, and I was covered in blood, and I knew it was happening. I knew we were miscarrying. And I woke my husband up. I said, you've got to change the sheets. I got to get out of these clothes. And then he held me in my room at 2 a.m. I just cried out, like, I don't want to do this again. Like, I don't. And he just said, shh, we're okay. Our life is okay. Get back in this moment with me. Look at me in the eye and know that we are okay. And we've done this before, and we've been through this before, and we survived it, and we have a daughter, and we have each other, and our life is still okay. We've got this. And my husband was my anchor in that very moment. He pulled me out of the darkness, out of me sinking deeper and deeper and deeper in my emotions and my thoughts and these crazy moments that were going through my head. And he pulled me back into the light in that very moment and said, we are going to be okay. No matter what happens, we're okay. And I did miscarry that baby. And guess what? I'm still okay. It sucks like hell. I am not going to lie. But I'm okay. And I learned so much from those experiences. And what I learned the most was that I am pretty badass tough. That my body has recovered this. That I am called to be a mother. That my babies aren't rejecting me. That maybe I don't understand why. But I know there is a purpose in all of this. And if it's anything, it's me here today sharing this, tearing away the silence barriers, opening up conversations about taboo topics that we would never have dared to speak about even a few years ago. So that is why I'm here. I'm blazing the trail today, talking about miscarriages. And I know that many of you maybe have gone through infertility and never experienced a loss, but never even experienced the pregnancy, the expectancy at all. You're just sitting in the waiting period, or maybe you've had a stillbirth and watched your baby at even 9 months come out of you not alive. And it's traumatic and it's horrible and it's not something I would ever wish upon anybody, because it is so, it takes a part of your soul away from you that you'll never get back. But I'm here today to tell you that there is still hope, that you are not barren, that maybe you still have something to birth. I don't know if we're all called to actually birth babies, but I do know we are all called to be mothers of purpose. And you're supposed to be expecting with dreams and visions and goals and giftings and business ideas and talents. Pick up those miscarried dreams. Pick up those aborted visions and start pursuing your life again, not in the darkness, but in the light. No matter what you are going through in this very moment, whether it's infertility in actually birthing babies, or infertility with your purpose or your passions, pick them up and start moving forward, drawing on your swords, picking up your dreams and your talents again, because you do have a destiny to birth. I am not barren. I don't know when my second baby is coming, but it is coming. And I have birthed so many things along this process. I have birthed my purpose, my confidence. I have birthed my dream. I have birthed being an amazing mom to my daughter who already exists. I have birthed being in the very present moment, being so grateful for my life and what I do have and not focusing on what I don't have. I have birthed peace even though I am in my pain. I haven't figured it all out yet. I'm not sitting here saying I've got it all cased, I've got my babies, my life's all turned around and there's rosy rainbows from here on out. It's not. I'm going to be real with you guys here. I don't have it all together. But just by leaning in to my pain, my problems, being vulnerable and honest and candid about it is allowing me to work through all of this, work through the infertility, allow myself to be fertile in other areas, allow myself to birth peace even amongst the pain. And that's why I'm here to encourage everyone. It is possible to be amongst a mess and still feel happy and at peace and know you still have a purpose and still you're fertile. We all have things to birth still, and we don't always know what life has for us, but lean into that uncertainty because you never know where your destiny lies within that. By tapping into that power of vulnerability instead of masking it, hiding it in shame, just be real about it and own it, flaws and all. I want to read an excerpt of my book, Heroine, Embrace Your Flaws and Own Your Awesome. I published this in 2018, and this was in the midst of my mess of miscarriages. And
It's just amazing how far we've come in 2 years, how far I'm still going, and embracing that. So it's just a beautiful tribute here. I just wanted to finish off this podcast with this excerpt in my book. The problem is we aren't combining all of these different infertility groups under one umbrella. They all seem to be separate on lone islands. My vision is to see these lone islands grouped together, visible, and making noise so these issues are talked about and heard by the masses. Opening the lines of communication and creating clear pathways will help us be informed about the challenges and tough decisions we need to make, but will also go a long way to help each one of us feel supported in our decisions. Let's band together for open, candid conversations about infertility and loss and make openness the norm. I truly believe women and couples would make better decisions about their own journeys if we worked off facts and support rather than fear and isolation. I had so many questions about issues varying from medical matters to emotional ones. Often, I also just needed empathy. I think empathy needs to be at the forefront of this movement. We need empathy from the medical staff, ourselves, our partners, others, and even from our workplaces. Support in the workplace for those dealing with infertility issues is so vital. Just like mental health is starting to gain more visibility, fertility should no longer be a taboo topic with employers. The movement starts with conversation, and this dialogue needs to take place everywhere. Start opening up in the home, within your family, your friends, your colleagues, with employers and employees, with men and women. Let's take ourselves off mute and turn up the volume. 2 ways to be an active participant of the Let's Get Loud movement are to first challenge ourselves to share our feelings and experiences, and second, be approachable for others to confide in you. Our words are needed, but more importantly, our ears are too. Knowing what others need from us will set the tone of how others will respond to us. It's give and take. We talk, we listen. We are the movement. We all have a part to play, and it has the possibility to grow into something so beautiful if we just keep talking. I started hearing a few tidbits on social media after my second miscarriage. I couldn't believe the outcry from other women. They needed to talk too. They needed to feel a belonging. They have had enough of the silence and the shame. We need this for ourselves and for every single person who has been affected by infertility and loss. I was so ashamed for so long. I can still remember bawling into my pillow asking myself, why can't I just move forward? The interesting thing is, though, you can only push me so far, and then I pushed back. I decided I was not going to let shame and fear rule me. I chose to rule them. So I want to inspire myself and others to get loud and breathe fire on this world. Together we can be the change if we stand together and proclaim we are here to stay. No more deflecting comments and tears. Let's own this conversation and allow our vulnerability and honesty to become the movement. When people can come together and let their guards down, magic happens. We will never stop infertility, but we can be an integral part of the healing process. There is power in numbers. There is healing in exposure. There is a unique freedom to owning the whole story. When you watch lawyer shows on TV and the defendant needs to take the stand, they often have some skeletons hidden in the closet. The defense lawyers stage a preemptive strike to eliminate the other side's power over them. That's the same with couples and women dealing with infertility and loss. Let's allow our loudness to be the preemptive strike. We don't need to defend what has happened or make up some stupid jokes about how we're just practicing for a baby. Let's be loud and own it. The world has nothing to critique when we own our skeletons. We have given these issues way too much power, which has dehumanized fertility. Let's show our human side and bring it back into the core of humanity. The moment I started being real with others, the more support I did feel. People didn't judge me, but rather they responded with their own vulnerability. It's been the most empowering experience of my life. I was so afraid of being criticized and feeling alone, but the louder I was while showing my true colors, the more I was accepted. For the first time in my life, I allowed people to see me. I let them see through me. And what they saw wasn't perfect, but it was heroin. Everywhere I go, I make it my mission to just be real. Some days I'm riding a wave and feeling amazing. I radiate happiness and confidence. Other times I might be struggling, and I own that too. We have to be loud about everything, the good and the bad. That's being human. If we all embrace the humanness of situations, true connections will take place. Connections can turn into cooperation and collaboration. Then we haven't just created a movement, but rather allowed communication to move freely amongst humankind. There are gaps in our connections with these issues right now, but I truly believe we can bridge them. Let's end the pain. Let's bring joy and support and hope to every man and woman that crosses your path in this world today. Be the reason someone feels compelled to share. Let's fracture the walls with our vulnerability and open the floodgates of communication. Let's allow a coming together of various issues and create a massive flow of support. It starts with just one. Choose to be that person today in your circle. Be that person in your community. I made a commitment to myself. The silence ends with me. I will pick up the torch, and I will run, and I will roar. Together we can create a noise which can be heard from one end of the world to the other. Together sound waves radiating from our souls will reach around the world and cause an empathy outbreak. I want to be part of that cause. I want to support because I know I am supported. I want to inspire because I am inspired by the people and the love I see and feel. Let love be the driving force today and the connector that is felt everywhere. Let love roar. That's it from my book, Heroine. And it's amazing from 2 years ago what we did with just getting loud and being the bridge and allowing loudness and our voices to be heard and not be hidden in shame. I birthed Footprints, Infertility and Pregnancy Loss Support Initiative in 2018 after I released this book. It is a healing outlet for men and women to come together, to grieve, to get healing tools and things to apply to help themselves navigate through these tough issues, to allow themselves to know that they're not alone. There's so many people out there that can give you support, a shoulder to lean on, and just know that you're part of a community, that you don't have to do this all by yourself. I've changed the healthcare system where I was from. Now men and women get support bags of how to navigate these issues and know that there is support in many different areas no matter what they're going through, whether it's miscarriage, whether it's stillbirth, infant loss, or infertility. I won the Woman of Influence Award for creating the program Footprints. So in another episode, I will be diving in further about this whole Footprints program. But if you do want to join this community and show your support and get loud with me about these taboo topics and bring them to the forefront of this world, please visit my Facebook page. It's called Footprints, Infertility and Pregnancy Loss Support Group. You can find it on there and join that community there and show support to others that are part of that group, as well as you can head to my website, blaisehunter.com. There's lots of information about Footprints in there. Just a recap of all what we talked about today, just leaning into your pain of infertility and getting loud about it. Let us become loud and own our flaws and be vulnerable, because there is power in vulnerability. It isn't our weakness. And by getting loud and owning what we're going through, we can help ourselves get through that emotional and mental difficulty, that mess, help us heal and move forward amongst the pain and coexist with it. And also we help others. We inspire others to lean into their pain and birth the best versions of themselves, even when we're flawed, because we're still awesome. Let's pick up those aborted dreams, those miscarried visions and goals, and birth our destiny. We all have a purpose to rise up to and be the heroine and the heroes of our lives. So that's it for this week's show. Challenge yourself to be vulnerable. Lean into those difficult conversations with ourselves and with others. Allow yourselves to be open about your own issues and listen to other people's issues and what they're going through in their journeys, because you never know how you guys can help each other. So that way we can rise up as the heroes of our lives and breathe fire together. Thanks for listening. I'm Blaise Hunter.
You've been listening to Blaze the Trail with Blaise Hunter. To learn more about how you can breathe fire and unleash the hero within, or to listen to past episodes, visit blaisehunter.com.